In this video, we're continuing with section 2.5 in geometry. We're going to be talking about special angles on parallel lines. So at the end of this video, you should be able to recognize which of our special angles are congruent and which of our special angles are parallel when we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal. So that's the key point here. Now we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, where before we only had two lines. It could be any two lines cut by a transversal. So we've got the same types of angles being formed, but now since the lines are parallel, we have some special relationships between the angles. Alright, so the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and go ahead and list one pair of each type of the following angles given our picture. So pause the video, put down at least one pair. When you come back, I'll have all the different pairs in so you can compare yours, and then we will continue from there. So pause now. Alright, so here you can see I've listed off all the different types of each pair of angles. So what you want to do is just double check that the pair that you wrote is included in my list, and if you've got that down, you should be ready to go on to the next part. So if you need to pause the video so you can double check, go ahead and do that, and then we will move on. Alright, so as I previously mentioned, and I'm going to repeat quite often because it's one of the most important points for this lesson here, is that we're taking our two lines cut by a transversal, and now we're going to make our lines parallel. So now we have two parallel lines, whereas before we only had two lines. So now I've got two parallel lines cut by a transversal, so I'll put some parallel line tick marks in here so we know that they're parallel. Then corresponding angles are. So if we look at our pairs of corresponding angles, I've got 1 and 5. And if you had to make a guess about the relationship between those once we make the lines parallel, you might guess that they are congruent. And in fact they are. So if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. Alright, so some examples. The highlighted one, it would be angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. Now before, if you notice when I listed these off, I only put and between them because we don't necessarily know that they're congruent, because we don't know that the lines are parallel. But now down here, since we know the lines are parallel, we know the corresponding angles are congruent. So here's one pair of corresponding angles that would be congruent. Or 3 and 7, that's another pair. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 7. Alright, so this is just two of the four pair of corresponding angles that would be congruent. The other two pair would also be congruent. So this is kind of nice because it's going to help us to solve more problems if we know that the lines are parallel. Alright, so that's going to be the end of this video. In the next video we'll continue with the other types of special angles. As always, if you have questions, make sure you get those answered, and we'll see you in the next video.